guys, this is going to be an analysis of my fourth and fifth crit races, which are at Ennerdale in Hull, and then also Darley Moor. So Ennerdale on the Saturday, and then Darley on the Sunday. So going to have a look at these. They were definitely my best crit races so far. Ennerdale on the Saturday was my first crit race that I actually finished in the pack, and then Darley finished as well. So managed to get a top 10 there as well. So definitely making progress and learning to ride in the bunch, but still things to learn from my performances at both races. So we'll dig into it. Now Ennerdale, first time racing here. It's a big sweeping circuit with very shallow bends. So you end up chicane here, then big shallow bends, but you're able to hold a lot of speed through those corners, and also you're also pedaling through a lot of those corners. You basically come into the corner, coast a bit, pedal through the corner a little bit, coast some more. Well, that's how I'd do it. A lot of the guys were just pedaling all the way through the corner, but I definitely don't want to pedal strike or lose traction. I'd want to get my balance right. But yeah, really fast corners, which made a change from Darley, and I definitely think it helped me on the next day, having raced the previous day and having my cornering be a lot sharper. But yeah, it's a bit narrower. It's only a 1 kilometre long circuit compared to Darley Moor, which is 2.4k. But yeah, I enjoyed it still, even if it was a bit more like a go-kart track, you could say. So like any crit race, it gets out hard. This first 5-6 minutes was pretty bonkers. I've never seen. I was lucky that I clipped in immediately because those people launching. There's a small straight and then a corner, and those guys sprinting into that first corner. So yeah, I was good to clip in straight away for that because it was on the gas from the get go. Yeah, this first 5.5-6 minutes, really high power, so like just under 400, over 400 normalized, and you like big surgy, spiky graph, so you're like sprinting out of all these corners. But it did settle down after this, thankfully. And basically, I mainly found myself at the back when I was within the peloton. Like this was a Cat 3-4 race because of worse on this circuit because it was quite narrow, or what. But yeah, I basically just found myself at the back, just holding that last wheel, and monitoring moves from there, and that seemed to work quite well. But obviously, you're never going to win a race from the back. Like there's certain riders that in the World Tour that do like to ride at the back, but then they'll sometimes get punished for it. So like Ethan Hayter's a good example where you'll find him at the back of most races, and it's like if it's the stage where he has a potential to win, like he needs to be up there at the finish. Like you can get caught behind crashes if you're swinging at the back. So I don't know. It's not like I'm going to learn to ride at the back. It's okay. I was happy riding at the back today. This was coming back from still only my second race back after the crash, so still a bit apprehensive, but wanting to learn to ride in any position in the peloton really. And thankfully at Darley the next day, I was happy riding like in those front 10 wheels or so. Maybe because it was Cat 4 race, wider circuit, a bit less cagey. I was a bit more comfortable in the corners than others. So yeah, different reasons, but I think it'll just all come with time. But yeah, like I say, started out hard, but then it did eased off. We look at the average power, easing off down to 300, and then does pick up again. So we went out hard, then we eased off a little bit. We started going, attack started rolling. It started getting harder again. You're having to dig harder out of each corner, but relatively sustainable. Like a bit over 300 average and 330 normalized. So like you're working hard, but it's manageable. Saying that, my heart rate was well up there. It was 180 by that first 5 minutes, and with my illness that I was dealing with, like I think my heart rate was a fair bit higher than normal. So I don't know how accurate the the 190 reading was, but I've never seen 190 for me. 185 I think would be the highest I've ever seen before. Calmed down for the next half of the race. It was a 45-minute race, so about halfway in here. And yeah, like I said, just mainly riding at the back, but being at the back, I was able to pretty well monitor what was going on ahead of me, so I could see the complete field and see what riders were doing. So, and when like my little gaps would open, I'd be able to see who's responding to the moves, and I could tell that the peloton was actually very motivated. So the riders in front of me, I knew that I could see that they were closing down that gap, so I wasn't having to expend loads of energy to bring it back together myself, because I'd just be able to hop on a wheel of a motivated rider that was bridging back to the main group. So that was good, being able to recognise that a little bit. And then when riders were actually really fatigued and they were actually dropping off, I'd make sure to attack over them to bridge up to like the back of the newly formed peloton. So yeah, chill after halfway, chilled a bit until the last couple of laps or so. Riders are starting to get fatigued here. So yeah, I think this is probably the last 10-15 minutes of the race is where kind of all went to shit. Riders were getting tired and falling off the back, so I'd find myself like attacking over more and more riders, because I'd still had the legs to keep contact. This also resulted in lapped riders still being on track. I think they were told to pull off the track, but there was definitely lapped riders to navigate at points as well. So yeah, this last 15 minutes was where it was starting to fall apart. So probably lots of these sprints out of the corners turned into slightly bigger sprints and such. And then I think it was around 4. If we look at the average power, so this last 20 minutes, it's pretty decent average power, 350, almost 390 normalized. But then just picking up into the finish, like it's the average power and the normalized power is creeping up. Like I say, having to do these attacks to maintain contact with the peloton. And then this last 5 or so minutes, last 5-6 minutes. So how many laps was this? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so this is the last 4 laps or so. And this is where, so I'd been attacking through, previous to this, I'd been attacking through dropped riders, and I found myself on the back of what I was pretty sure was the main peloton. And then I ended up, but because it was kind of getting ripped to shreds and there was lapped riders on course, I kind of attacked through the peloton and ended up hitting the front. And I kind of worked out what was going on. It looked like there was just a 2-man break up the road. There was actually a 2-man break and then one further rider up the road. So I'm pretty sure I was in the main peloton, and basically I ended up taking the lead of the peloton. And then no one wanted to come past me. No one else wanted to pull really. And I wasn't letting off the gas. I could have been tactical and just sat up really and let someone else do the work. But I got on the front and I was like, okay, ride hard, try and bridge the gap to these riders in front. Did try and sprint hard out of the corners to drop the rider on my wheel, but they knew what they were doing, and it's very hard to drop someone from the front, especially a rider who knows what they're doing. They're sprinting out the corner to keep on your wheel, but the sprint that they have to do is a lot lower than what you're having to do out in the wind. So yeah, I found myself out on the front doing big power, 409, 450 normalized, and yeah, heart rate was going crazy because just drilling it on the front, getting to 190 by the sprint, and yeah, at least being on the front, I'm able to take the lines I want through the corners. Probably a bit slower than through the corners than the guys behind me would have liked, but no one wanted to come through, so they didn't. Um, but yeah, and then coming into the finishing straight, so the finishing straight was into a headwind, and I made a dig, made a dig on this final lap, like over 500 watts and sprinting out of each corner. But yeah, just not able to do a strong enough effort to just win from the front, which is a very hard place to win from. So out of the final corner, I smacked it at 1,000 watts, and then just tried to hold on for the line, and then I think 7 or 8 riders maybe came past me in the finish, just because going into a headwind they had that speed differential. Um, so yeah, it happens. But I was mainly just happy to get one under the belt, felt safe during the race, felt confident. Um, yeah, big, really fast corners, like just this being me on the front, like you're maintaining so much speed through the corners, like dropping to just below 40 km an hour at the slowest sections. Um, but yeah, it was tactically pretty bad, but I realised that, and that I was basically just happy to be in the mix at the finish, I guess. And like I said, I think there was one guy up the road, and then a two-man break, and then all the guys who came around me in the sprint. So I was probably 11th, 12th, or 13th. They didn't give me a position. They obviously after the top 10 they stopped counting. Probably could have saved a fair bit more energy if I was mid-pack, closer to the front, and also in that position you're better able to monitor what's going on, and also make moves off the front yourself. So that's definitely the better place to be. But today, on this day, I just it felt a lot better to be at the back. Um, I was able to ride there, so it's something I know I can do. But it's not ideal. So something to have, but definitely want to work on being more confident within the pack, so that yeah, you're in that better tactical position. And yeah, probably don't lead out the sprint from the front, unless it's like a really, because it's such, even though it's into a headwind, like, it wasn't like a hard sprint. It wasn't like an uphill sprint where it's going to be a deciding variable. Like having people behind with a speed differential is so much more powerful. So yeah, but I got on the front and I was just drilling it, and yeah, trying to sprint out the corners to drop him, but yeah, more heads down, thumbs up, pretty brain dead. Whereas next day at Darley, obviously having raced a bit tactically poor the previous day, wanted to try and race a little bit smarter, and I think because of my cornering, racing the previous day on these big sweeping bends, I was pretty confident with my cornering. And actually, this was a Cat 4 only race, so probably slightly weaker riders, but I did feel a lot more confident in the corners, and I was actually going around people in some of the corners, taking the outside line, but a lot smoother of a line, maintaining more speed, obviously, not as much brake going into the corner. So yeah, I felt like my cornering was on point today, and was a little bit wet, very windy, but yeah, because it was so windy, the track dried out, so it wasn't super wet really. But yeah, with this race, I guess with the weaker field, I did find myself on the front, well, near the front 10 sort of wheels, and yeah, I felt confident there. And it was just making sure that I wasn't overlapping wheels. Like any time that I'd find myself like slightly overlapping the guy in front, I'd just just pull some brake, move back into make sure you're tucked in behind the rider rather than half wheeling them, because overlapping wheels is like the most common way to go down, which I found out a few weeks ago. But yeah, it was definitely got out hard, but it wasn't like Ennerdale the previous day, where it was absolutely bonkers off the start. So yeah, this is just there's nothing crazy about the start we had. So this was first half, first 25 minutes. Yeah, so it was hard work. 340 average 365 normalized, and the heart rate was getting up again into the 180s again, which is pretty high for me. So we were working hard, we were sprinting out of the corners, but being at the front, it's hard work, but you're able to, I think, get on the wheel a lot easier. At the back, there's the risk of that slingshot effect where there's so much speed loss going into the corner that trickles down the peloton that it feels like you have to work even harder to out of each of the corners. But so for this first 25 minutes, we were working really hard and managed to actually, because of that effort, we were actually dropping a fair few riders out the back. And yeah, I was feeling confident. I wasn't making attacks off the front myself, but I could tell that there was a good few guys who were motivated to get a breakaway established, and I was monitoring that and ready to basically jump across to that myself, or if we dropped the peloton. There was one stage where we dropped the peloton. There was a gap behind, and the 6 or 8 of us that were motivated to work, I guess. I was like, we got a gap, let's go. But then it wasn't a big enough gap, so I just got brought back together by the next corner, really. But yeah, the reason I'd lapped it is because unfortunately after 25 minutes, I was about second or third wheel, I think, going into the home straight, and I felt like so there was a super strong headwind, so northerly breeze, and it felt like I caught a gust of wind on my rear wheel, but then I realised that it's someone who'd clipped my wheel, and I looked behind, and there was looked like a couple of riders that were down. So yeah, that was really unfortunate, because yeah, it's not pleasant at all. I don't think I deviated at all, but like I might have done. But he was overlapping the wheel and might have caught like a bad gust of wind. That's the most logical thing I can think of. Caught a bad gust of wind, clipped my wheel, and then went down. But so it's really not nice. But I guess the best part about the most fortunate thing is that was the slowest section, like into the headwind. We're going at 30k an hour rather than a higher speed crash, but yeah, it's never going to be fun to crash. So it was really unfortunate, because it would have been one of the riders that was working really hard at the front as well, trying to get that break established. So he was a strong rider, and basically you don't want, like, even though the race went on, like I'd want the race to be more together and have all the riders come into the finish to have it be more of a fair race, and have a when a breakaway gets established, it's because they're the strongest riders rather than because of a crash. So yeah, after the crash, I sat up for a lap, went through the finish, so just soft pedaling basically. I went through the finish, and we all said there's been a crash, and 6 riders continued riding. I was basically with them, but just sat up. They kept riding, and then another rider came past me as well, but I assumed the race would just be neutralised, because that's what happened a couple of weeks ago. So I was thinking, oh, okay, I'll soft pedal round to the crash, which was around here, and then I'll then just see everyone's all right. Obviously, I'm assuming the paramedics would be there already, and so I want to give them space, but just do an easy lap and get out of their way, really, make sure everyone's okay. But by the time I got round to here, there was no one there, which was quite strange, because obviously I was expecting a bit more carnage. I can't remember, looking behind me after the crash happened, like I can't recall like what really I saw. But hopefully it's the case that the riders that went down didn't go down too badly and were able to just get back up on their bikes. Guy I talked to said that he saw some pretty mangled handlebars, but hopefully the rider themselves were actually okay. So yeah, and then I went through the finish, and I asked, hey, is the race still on? And the official looked at me like, you stupid kid? Like, yeah, of course it's still on. I'm like, all right. So then I lapped the Wahoo again, started going, and chased to the guy, one guy out in front who was off the back of the 6-man breakaway, and then worked. So this guy called Mark from Matlock CC. So then just worked with him all the way into all the way for the rest of the race. I was motivated to bring them back, and it was looking like that was going to be a possibility. I guess I was doing most of the turns on the front. When I went past him, I would literally like get on my wheel, because he'd been working hard at the start of the race to try and get a break established. So I knew he's a strong rider. I knew we could. There's a potential for us to work well together to reel them back in. But I would have felt like a dick attacking over him to try and solo bridge. So I was like, yeah, we'll try and work together. And at least this 20, well, it was more like 30 minutes. This time we were someone else to ride with, After 25, I lapped the watch after I realised we weren't going to make it. So like 25 minutes of chasing back on, high average power, high normalised. Heart rate was pretty high. Yeah, that's the sort of heart rate I do for my had for my TT effort the other week. So yeah, I was working hard, but just wasn't happening. I could see that they were working well together. So yeah, realised that we're battling for the final few position. Well, I think it was actually a 5-man break, so battling for 6th and 7th. And I knew I was a stronger rider because I was doing most of the pulls on the front. Well, maybe he was going hard at the start of the race, so maybe he just burnt all his matches. But I just out of on the final lap, so we got the chicane here. Out of the chicane, I did. We actually overtook a couple of lap riders. So I overtook one of the lap riders through the corner, then drafted the second lap rider, and then sprinted over them. So made a dig out of the hairpin, and then just holding bonkers power, as high a power as I could, just high threshold to into the finish, and then sprinting out of this corner, and then gurning in the wind, massive, disgusting headwind into the finish, getting close to 190 BPM again. Yeah, crazy. Working really hard to. I'd long dropped him, but I was not looking back. I was just drilling it into the line. So then came home for 6th overall on the day, I think it was. That's what they told me. Result hasn't come through on BC, but yeah. So that's would be my first official points, I guess. But yeah, I guess I was quite happy with how I was racing it. I was feeling good at the front. It's definitely a better place to be in those first 10 wheels or so. So long as you're comfortable there. Like, it wasn't the argy-barginess of Ennerdale the previous day, where people were just fighting for position unnecessarily. Like, it felt a lot more civil, to put it that way. During the start, I was pretty keen to get a break I was pretty keen to get in a break that would have been established. So I could have been doing more work to try and get that done myself. Attack off the front and see if anyone bridged to me, rather than just waiting for someone else to do the work and then bridging to them. But yeah, we'll experiment with that over the next. Got plenty more races coming up, so get to experiment with that and finding the good opportunities to attack. But yeah, this was good training. This first 25 minutes especially was probably the best peloton riding I've done so far. And then even though we're a 2-man break off the back of the peloton, like, this was decent breakaway riding. Like, okay, what average speed, how high an average speed can we get to work together to try and bring them back in. And then I guess decent tactics from me. Just it's not that I didn't trust my sprint, but I knew I could more reliably drop him out of one of the corners and then hold good power into the finish. So that's the strategy I went with. But yeah, at the end of the day, I wasn't too happy with the scenario, because I would have. It's always a shame to have a crash occur. So I would have preferred that didn't happen. Like, I set up after the crash because I felt like that was the right thing to do. I didn't want to attack out of a crash, even though I guess the peloton was already shredded a fair bit. Like some of the riders didn't even know that. Chatting with a guy who didn't even know a crash had happened, because I guess the riders who had crashed had got back up by the time he got round to them, like a minute later or so. Even given the scenario, like it was still good practice and good learnings from me. Yeah, feel like I'm finally starting to get the hang of this crit racing stuff. So plenty more to come, and yeah, get to experiment with using some slightly better tactics to try and get breaks established, not lead out sprints, or if I'm use my power more wisely, basically. Like at Ennerdale, I should have used that power that I did to pull for the last 4 laps. I should have used that to try and attack off the front and maybe bridge to the two-man breakaway by myself. Maybe the peloton would have done the work to catch me. Maybe they wouldn't. So yeah, but it's nice that we're getting to the stage where it's tactics I need to worry about rather than just like the fundamentals of just not getting dropped. Like I feel like I should be able to, like most races now, there's unless something goes horribly wrong, I should be able to finish them and be in some sort of contention at the end. Now it's just going to be the nuances of bike racing to try and make sure that I'm in first place when we get to the finish.